All right, welcome to another episode of the High Performance Podcast. I'm joined as always by my faithful co-host, Jacob the Mosquito. Also joined by esteemed three-time returning guest, Kier, Wenham, Flatt, also known as the rugby guy, formerly rugby strength coach, now unemployed. Call me Kier. How are you doing today?
I'm honoured, brother. The three-peat. Thank you for having me back.
Three-peat's huge. One of the pitfalls of long-form content creation that we haven't adhered to is consistency. So for the rare high-performance audience members who aren't already familiar with you, can you give us a little bit of a breakdown? Because you've had a fucking journey. I know we covered it on your last episode, but I also like getting people to reintroduce themselves because, I don't know, I just like hearing how it changes over time.
Formerly wanted to be a professional athlete when I was a kid. Realized at 15, 5'10", not very fast, not very powerful, not very strong, not brave, not skillful. Decided, right, I'm going to get as close to the field as I can. Strength coach. Brief foray into a psychology degree, which I realized was not going to work out, so I quit. Waited a year, went back to uni, did that. Spent 2 years in the wilderness, like Jesus in the desert, because I was a terrible coach. Worked for free for a year at London Wasps. This is after 2 years of not working for free. I wasn't good enough to work for free. I did that for a year. I was below the poverty line in terms of wages for a year. Then I was head of academy for 6 months. I left, threw my toys out the pram because I wanted to work with the senior team. So I went down a league and took a pay cut to go to Rotherham Titans. I said, fuck this, and moved to Australia because my ex was from Cairns. So we moved to Sydney. Realized, oh fuck, this is the middle of the NRL season, nobody's hiring. So I was a personal trainer at Vision for 6 weeks, and then I got
shout out to Vision.
That's Vision for training.
And Exo said, "Do you want to go work with Argentina? It could be a week, it could be 12 weeks." So I told this guy at Vision, I was like, "Yeah, I'm out of here," and I was gone the next week, and it turned into 3 months. That convinced Sydney Roosters to pick up the phone. And I got interviewed for effectively like the head of academy, the 20s role. Because at that time we did the 20s and the 16s. That lasted 6 months. Worst fucking job I ever had. So I quit that and just got extremely lucky to be my own replacement for the Pumas. Because the guy that they had hired to replace me, he dropped out. So I became my own replacement. And I saw that through until the end of the World Cup. And then, for a bunch of reasons, they didn't want to continue with Exos, and Exos smartly signed a non-compete clause in their agreements. So I went off to Tokyo for 2 years to cash in. Miserable place to work. Nice experience.
Wait, that it was a non-compete for you? You couldn't go back in for the game.
Yeah, because what they do is they write into their agreements that if you were to go in, so obviously their business model is that they're effectively selling their relationships and their network and their model, I guess. But more than anything, they just know where to find good coaches and who's going to be a good fit for teams. So whatever it is they're going to pay you, they mark up that service to charge the teams. And obviously the teams don't want to spend whatever the markup is. So they'll say, hey, if you sign directly with us, we'll give you some number between what you're getting paid now and what Exos are charging them. So
I don't want to pull you into a tricky situation. Like in an industry where if you throw out a fucking job advertisement and you've got people like fucking climbing over your backyard fence willing to do it for free, how does a company like Exos find its place? And I'm assuming the answer will be like finding you better candidates. But like it just seems like there's so many unemployed people.
They were, Exos are pretty smart in just how they've done their business. Like if you look at historically how they've done business, I would be very surprised if they ever made a penny from the NFL Combine to this day. But every year, half the first round goes through Exos. And I think it's just a thing that the NFL, the Combine, and when you're doing that, that's your promo, that's your content, all that kind of stuff. You pump out these freaks. And I think off the back of those relationships, that's when they start to get those contracts. So for example, when did they start with Germany football, soccer?
Was that their first breakout into professional sports?
That's a big one. And it culminated in them winning in 2014. The China stuff, that's probably more just they have a relationship and information advantage because like Japanese rugby, they only go through agents, they only go through organizations, all that kind of stuff. And then I want to say the Argentina rugby thing was Adidas because they used to partner, or no, they still do partner with Adidas. And that was the equipment provider for the Pumas until 2012. So they had started in 2007, came third in that World Cup. And then it was like, right, we're going to do this every year. So yeah, that was the reason why that worked. So yeah, I went to Japan for 2 years. Did not like it. I liked the money, but I'd really had enough of rugby by that point. And then I decided, right, I'm going to work in the NFL. So I started again at University of Richmond, $14,000. And immediately got my son's mother pregnant, which I was not planning on. And that kind of, with 2 years hindsight, that kind of killed the NFL thing, which I'm not remotely mad about. But yeah, it got to COVID. We had already split. I wasn't seeing him. And then I came to the kind of realization of, well, do I want to be a good parent? Do I want to be a good coach? And as I'm sure you know, the benefit of COVID was that if you had an internet business and it was education based, it's such a perfect storm because there's never again will that amount of people be legally required to stay in their houses, spending money that isn't theirs to pretend like they're being productive and learning something. So,
and did you have that already set up beforehand, or was it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I started working for myself 2008 in person, brick and mortar personal trainer. Online 2010, started the rugby strength coach community in 2015, and that morphed into Strength Coach Network. Maybe
how long did it take, just quickly, to get rugby strength coach to the point where it was contributing meaningfully to your income?
I'd have to go back through the numbers, but I think in the sales letter for the course, it was roughly, so that I started checking the numbers because I have the numbers from 2015 because that was when I changed payment processes. I think prior to that I'd done PayPal, but I want to say 2015 was about 50K.
Oh, 20, no, so it was, yeah.
Damn.
Oh yeah. Listen, when I was in Tokyo, I did not touch the money. The only time I touched my bank account in Tokyo, my Japanese bank account, was for tattoos and holidays. And when I left to come to the States, I had 250K saved up. So certainly 2016 onwards, I really didn't need to work for a team. I could work for myself.
Done the Richmond situation without that? Like, could you have?
No, of course not. Well, here's the thing. Could I have done it if I'd been 25 again and willing to work 2 or 3 jobs and all that kind of stuff? Sure. I could have, but I didn't want to. I wanted to do it. I didn't want to do it that bad. And then obviously once I had a kid and all that kind of stuff, not really. Yeah. So yeah, I was pretty fortunate in that regard. But the ramp up, I want to say there was a dip. There was a dip in 2018 because we had the baby. 2019, I was like, fuck. So that 2019 was the first 100K year. 2020 was 250. Damn. 21, 500, 22, 5-ish. And I sold in 23.
Damn.
But that's what happened after I left. After I left coaching, I was that pissed off at William and Mary. I was like, you know what? Fuck you. There was a lot of strong army and coercion, and you can't say this, you can't do that, all this kind of stuff. So I made a point.
This is pre-sovereign man, Kier. If anyone listened to the last
I'd read it. I was kind of.
Oh, you'd read it at that point. It laid the foundation.
Yeah, but the first 90 days after leaving William and Mary, 100K revenue. I kind of made a mental note of like, right, I'm going to fucking do this. So yeah.
Yeah, that's fucking Hormozy level shit. Sort of going on that, how are you finding unemployment at the moment? Like, are you bored with it? Is it something where this is a short-term sort of phase, or you really are just looking to lifestyle max at this stage of your career?
No, I'm not doing that. No. So we literally just hired this week. So we're starting an ad agency for coaches that want to grow their business.
Is this a new avenue of money moves, or is the main project
money moves,
now?
Money moves is lead gen. That's the lead gen. So here's the thing. I think I'm sure you will be able to relate to this. And certainly I found that to be the case for myself. So one mistake that I made, it did help me, but it was a mistake. So he's in your area, James Schramko. So I went to the James Schramko event in 2015. That was where I started Strength Coach Network, or what would have turned into that. And I read Lean Startup, and you basically hear that, paid growth. Why drive 35 and a 50 when you can pay money to drive the 50 and really get it cranky? And I did that. And obviously this is almost 10 years ago. Well, I was buying Facebook ads without a manager 10 years ago. And it was a license to print money. I wish I'd been more aggressive. But I ended up hiring an ad manager in 2016 when I was in Tokyo. And because I was a little bit naive, didn't negotiate the deal as well as I should have done, there were months where I paid this guy like 4 or 5K. When we were really cooking in 2020 and 2021, I was paying him like 4 or 5K a month because he was on a sliding deal. So I think for most coaches, once you start to get that traction, 10, 20, 30 plus $1,000 a year, if you want to really start to put your foot down with ads, you're probably going to need an ad manager, and you're probably going to need in excess of $1,000 a month of ad spend at the very, very least. That tends to be, in my experience, too big of a jump technically and financially for most coaches to do that. So it would be the equivalent of going, okay, well, I need to get somewhere quicker. I'm just going to go from walking to buying a car. There's a lot of skill and expense that comes into that. But the middle option is you get the bus. So what we're doing is hopefully providing that service to coaches. We do have 4 clients already, and we're ramping up, but providing, because we can streamline and get those efficiencies from working in the fitness niche, knowing what does work or doesn't work to an extent, and then with a boss.
Because I've seen so many people hire ad agencies running fitness businesses, but they're just these generic ad agencies. And again, usually working with bigger brands that can actually make that jump more sustainably. Yeah. But I feel like they don't actually even understand how to convert in our industry.
Exactly. And I think, I've done it a few different ways, like digital products, online coaching, courses, all that kind of stuff. So I do have a decent amount of experience. And then I think if there's one thing that I've been able to do well throughout my career is I understand strength coaches pretty well. When I was trying to sell Strength Coach Network to Play, they didn't bite, but I was in talks with Play, and it may have pissed them off, but I pointed out to them that just me, I have more followers than all of your accounts combined. And if you look at my LTVs, they spend a lot more money per customer with me than they do with you. So why don't we plug that into your network? And suddenly Strength Coach Network just becomes hey, do you want an education license for $5,000 on top of your 250 of flooring that's pure profit? It would have made sense for them. But yeah, I can get
Play just as it currently stands, gym fit outs and
flooring, primarily flooring. Yeah. Yeah. And which,
that's a fucking gold mine. Sorry, I shouldn't be laughing at that. Printing money compared to me.
It is, I think it is a good business, but the thing is, it's one of those businesses where you only get paid every 2 or 3 years. Because you're only getting paid when you do the refit. So that would be the advantage of, I was thinking for them, here's an annual education license.
Make sure the business lasts for 3 years, so actually get to refit it.
Yeah, and I think I understand why they didn't want to go for it on a personal level, because I piss a lot of people off. But it's one of those double-edged swords where I wouldn't have been able to grow the site to that point had I not taken that stance. and I'm going to be very sneaky here, there's a lot of things happening with Strength Coach Network right now in terms of accreditation with the major bodies where it was my idea, but they would never have gone for it had I still owned the company. So, that's another reason why it didn't happen until now within Strength Coach Network. But yeah, never mind. They actually shut down their education offering. So they priced it crazy cheap. And obviously a lot of cheap people bought in, but it clearly wasn't working for them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting as well. But I guess that's sort of the thing. If they were looking to make it an arm of their business, they were just sort of looking at it as an add-on at any point where they experience any friction with that aspect of the business. Like they're just going to throw it in the trash.
Yeah.
Why I was sort of asking about the whole how long it took you to monetize rugby strength coach, and it kind of backfired because I just feel like there's this attitude within our industry where people will grind at trying to get a job in pro sport or with the college or something like that. And they'll dedicate like 5 years to just getting on their knees and sucking dick for 15 grand a year. Whereas the potential upside to having a pumping strength coach, pumping e-commerce business, the upside's so much higher. But it just seems like if people put the same amount of effort and dedication into something like that, it's not perceived as an actual reliable pathway. Like, do you have any commentary on that at all?
I mean, to me, it's a lot more reliable to opt into a situation that's under my control.
Yeah.
I think yes. Are there people out there that make $1 million a year as a strength coach? Yeah, there's a handful of them. But it's like, I always tell people it's like The Wire. Only a few people get to be Stringer Bell. Everyone else gets shot in the face. And the thing is, you're really putting yourself in a situation where there are so many events that have to happen that are outside of your control to arrive in that fortunate situation. The odds are actually stacked much more in your favor if you kind of seize the means of production, which it makes people feel uncomfortable because there's more chance of failure. But you take away the safety net, but you also take away the ceiling.
Yeah.
That's America.
Yeah, it's something, you said it on a podcast and it's stuck in my head talking about the social mobility in the USA. I think like the figure you quoted, it's like, most people, up to 70% of people in the US at any given point in their lives will find themselves in the top 1%, but then also potentially below the
top quartile.
Oh, top quartile. I was like, what?
Yeah.
No. That makes more sense, but still, top quarter making backs or potentially below the poverty line.
Yeah.
Whereas I think the country used as an example of lower social mobility was France, where it's just like, you're born rich, probably going to die rich. But then same thing if you're born into the gutter, unless your name's Francis.
The 1% in America, I think you have to hit like 450 to be in the 1% in America.
That's good for a strength coach.
That's pretty fucking good. It's relatively low in the UK. I think it's only about £150,000 to be in the 1% in the UK. And then my guess is obviously Australia would be higher, much higher.
Way higher, I reckon.
Yeah,
they just announced it. So if you want to buy a house and you live in Sydney and you don't want to experience any, I can't remember what they called it, but like mortgage-induced stress, which I think they deemed was it being more than 30% of your income, you have to be earning like $350,000 a year.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
it's ridiculous.
Not too bad, but it's getting spicy.
I used to live in North Bondi, right by the RSL, and it was just a generic, normal 2-bedroom apartment, and it was like 1.5 million.
Yeah,
it blew my mind.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, I was renting.
No, I was in that. Do you know the Pink Tower on Brighton Boulevard? There's a bright blue one and then a bright pink one. I was in that. That was my little 4x4 prison cell during the shutdown where I just cranked out all my online stuff. It's a special time in my life. What do you think is some of the biggest misconceptions about having an e-commerce business for strength coaches? Like you see people having a crack at this and just completely running in the wrong direction. Like if you could isolate a couple of key areas that people need to work on. I know it's a tremendously vague question, but
I think it's because of I think it's equal parts enthusiasm and anxiety, which is I have to make this work.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big one, which is the second people start working for themselves, it's always straight to buy my stuff, buy my stuff, buy my stuff, buy my stuff.
Just hoeing.
Yeah. Which is, equivalent of going up to a girl in a bar and saying fancy a fuck. The one that says yes is not the one you want to go home with, and 99.9% are going to slap you in the face. Yeah. So obviously,
that's Mrs. cancelling on day 6 of the free 7-day trial.
Yeah. So if when you go out hoeing in real life, if you have the self-control to break the process down and do it step by step, rather than just go straight and be like, oh, your place or mine. Introduce yourself, small talk, exchange numbers, build a relationship, go on a series of dates, and so on. In real life, you're only supposed to do that one girl at one time. With social media and the scale of the internet, you can do that with hundreds or thousands of people at once. But if you have the self-discipline to break that process down and to never ask for more time and attention, because that's the currency of the internet until money changes hands. If you're only ever asking for the amount that you're entitled to, and you're providing more value than you're asking or receiving in terms of time and attention, you're cementing and building that relationship over time, and you earn the right to ask for bigger and bigger commitments in the future, which culminates in a sale. And then actually, I haven't written a blog in 5 years. I wrote one today. So if you go callmekier.com/blog, it's up there right now. I published it just before we spoke. And that's another thing, which is when you are a coach, and we're very scientific. When you're scientifically minded as a coach, you get tricked into thinking that if you just make a strong enough logical argument for your product or service, that you can convince people to buy. Yeah. Not going to happen. All the logical stuff is just to rationalize the emotional decision that they've already made. So what you have to do is grab attention, evoke some kind of emotional reaction, probably through a meme or going after someone they like, and being interesting and different, which is what you've done a great job of, because it's only once you have that attention and that intrigue that you can then tell the logical story, and they'll be like, oh, actually, you know what? I'm right to spend my money with this person.
Yeah, it's great. Jacob, I know you got the next question, but yeah, something that I also want to echo is like, I do understand it. I think that might be one of the reasons why a lot of highly qualified strength coaches and highly experienced strength coaches struggle in the online space, is like, they don't understand how valuable 3 seconds of attention is. Like, and they're bitching and moaning. They're like, oh, people didn't want to read my 5,000 word fucking essay on Instagram. It's like, you haven't earned that right yet. Like, stick that behind a fucking paywall and wait till people actually give a fuck about you. Whereas people they do all this stuff sort of in the trenches, and they just want so much validation from that from the get-go. It's like, why do I give a fuck about that? I'm scrolling. There's like a photo of Kim Kardashian with her glutes out, like just below you. And you want me to read your bullshit fucking dissertation that got you like $10,000 a year?
Yeah.
Fucking insane. Sorry, Jacob, hand it over to you.
So for you, with your new sort of business with this ad agency, for young coaches out there, apart from like with the income that's coming in for them, is there any sort of telltale signs that they should start sort of pumping ads and stuff like that?
Well, I would say if you're going to start pumping them, you need to dabble and dip a toe first and make sure they're working. If we kind of work backwards, you really want to be pumping ads when you know that the ads work and that you know your numbers pretty well. So if you don't know pretty much to the penny what your lifetime value is, what your customer acquisition cost is, what your click-through rate, conversion rate, all that kind of stuff, if you ask those questions, you're like, what's an LTV? Do not be pumping ads, right?
Yeah, I think I used the wrong word with pumping, but like sort of also like first starting with ads.
Got it. Well. Okay, right. Yeah. So
I used the wrong word.
Yeah, like entry budget, like, because I understand that logic of like, you want to dip your toe in and test, but is $50 spent on an ad gonna get me enough data so then I can make informed decision making? Like, what does that stuff sort of look like entry level?
Basically, yeah. So the average cost per click now on Facebook is like a dollar per click US. And then if you are getting emails for anything under $10, you're doing good. 3 to 5 is the goal.
Wait, $10 per email?
Up to.
Oh,
if you have a decent LTV, you can make it up on the back end.
Yeah, high ticket. Yeah, fair.
Yeah. So, for example, the course.
Fuck me, people better be converting, but
Yeah. Well, the easiest way to make ads work is to have customers spend a lot of fucking money on the back end.
So is that so? I know, because I want to get back to this dipping your toe into ads,
Yeah.
but I also am curious on your take on meta shifts in e-commerce in our industry in general. Like, do you feel like there's a bit of I think we sort of touched on this last interview, like a subscription revenue hangover, or people sort of looked at that as, what's the fucking word? Like passive income. Whereas I think what you were already sort of on the frontier of is pushing higher ticket items just to realize that, $1 today is worth more than $1 tomorrow. Or is it not purely Keynesian economics?
I've kind of revised. I would say both.
Okay, because this is pretty hectic, I think.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I think it's always one of those things where you just, grass is always greener. But I do feel when you are selling high ticket stuff on the front end or as one-offs, it is great. For example, this January, we worked out that our CAC was like $150 and our average order value was $900. So literally every day I was going to the ad guy, spend more. And I think we topped out at over 500 a day in ads. Which is nothing. For example, I spoke to somebody the other day, 16K a day he was spending in ads.
God, you don't have to out your friend Ben Patrick like that.
Well, that's great. But then it is feast and famine. So you have months where you make, 50K. My best ever was from all sources, 100K in a month. And then it goes down again. So that's great, but it's also great to have predictable income. I think the caveat to the subscription stuff is, are you structuring the business in such a way that you can keep delivering on those promises month after month after month in a manageable fashion? And ideally, having done it the wrong way for me, in a way that can be handed off to somebody else. The problem with Strength Coach Network was it was this cult of personality where I, for the most part, was the product. Hence the ad agency. So yes, both matter. But with regard to starting out with ads, you do need to know your numbers, because there's just a cost of doing business on the platforms. Facebook and Instagram tend to be the cheapest. And that might be because they're lower quality. I know for a fact that the ROI on YouTube, for example, is awesome, but it's way more expensive in terms of like CPM, click through, cost per lead, all that kind of stuff. Google's a little bit different for what we do, but for example, TikTok, crazy cheap, does not convert. LinkedIn, crazy expensive, does convert.
Yeah, you don't want the audience.
Crazy, yeah, the stereotype of TikTok people. But I feel like this was a journey that every social platform went on.
Of course.
It sort of initially is very geared towards grabbing attention, and then over time becomes a more sustainable e-commerce platform. Then it's weird because TikTok's algorithm, even with people with good traction, it does seem to be much more volatile.
Yeah.
Go on.
Well, so I mean, I'm not on TikTok. I just give TikTok to JJ, who's my partner, but from what he tells me, TikTok is very, very easy to blow up with a single video. It's really, really hard to blow up with a bunch.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's just the way that all platforms, when they're new, people aren't mentally trained to ignore ads, or there might not even be ads. So it's purely organic. People are highly engaged with the platform. It gets busier and busier and busier. And then people start to race in to buy ads. So the ads, Facebook, Instagram, any platform, the ads are as cheap today as they're ever going to be. I used to get emails for 75 cents 10 years ago. And now I'm paying 6 times that. And I'm better now than I was 10 years ago. But anyway.
It's crazy when you look back in the day, because even thinking back to when Instagram had oh my God, it's too early in the morning. What do you call it when things are just in fucking order? A chronological timeline. Yeah. I'd have this whole industry in a headlock by now.
So funnily enough, I went away from James Schramko's forum. I came back and I searched something about podcasting, and I found a post from myself in 2014. And I said, I've been podcasting for 2 or 3 weeks. I'm only getting 5,000 uniques an episode. Not very good, blah, blah, blah. I could barely crack 1,000 now with all the career that I've had since then. So yeah, it's one of those things. It just gets harder and harder. The longer you go.
I fucking loved your OG podcast. I would go back to, I guarantee you, if you had done that weekly and kept that up, you'd have an outrageous amount of downloads. Because that was us with the High Performance podcast. I think it was like 18 months to get our first 2,000 download month. But then within 6 months, it's like over 10K.
And then you just turned into Rob Pacey, just fucking asking the same questions again and again.
Oh, yeah. That's definitely an aspect of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And that, I'm sure had I stayed in rugby, I'd probably have made way more money than I ended up doing. If I'd have stayed doing podcasting, I started in 2015. If I'd stayed doing podcasting, I'd have made way more money. If I'd have stayed in football, I would have made way more money. I just get bored.
But maybe neck yourself as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a cost of doing business. You're gonna pay like $1 a click, $5-ish an email. So you do have to know with a reasonable confidence what your conversion rate is going to be, how much each customer is going to be worth to you, so that you can justify those numbers. So it makes sense to set up all your tracking, to have a system that you can work out those numbers on the front end, and then have those numbers in mind when you do start to test with ads. I think it makes sense to test the bottom of the funnel first, because that tends to be the fastest return. Basically, all a business funnel is a machine for turning strangers into customers. And there's just an amount of time. There's a number of exposures. There's an amount of content that they have to consume of yours to get them all the way from the top to the bottom. And it takes time. And if you're spending money on ads to reach top of funnel, to get a new audience, all that kind of stuff, you are kind of sat there twiddling your thumbs, waiting for the money to come through at the other end.
Because I feel like the perception of it that people have is content goes viral, 10,000 likes come in, and then cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. So I'm glad that you highlighted that. It's like, it is a process. Like no one discovers. It's so rare. It's so rare and I think once you have a huge reputation and maybe a higher follower count and you've been again, like maybe that process gets quicker. But I think so many people are just completely oblivious to that. It's so obvious once you've been in the game and experienced that. But I think so many people from the outside looking in, it's biggest misconception about like what the process of finding out about you to then becoming a customer looks like.
If you're starting to get a little bit of traction and you're starting to buy ads, the fact that you have a little bit of traction means that you have an audience. It means that they're engaged. They value what you do. But just because nobody rides for free on social media platforms, it means that you're only reaching a portion of those people. So the likelihood is if you put paid ads in front of them with an offer, they're going to buy and you're going to get your money back pretty quickly because they've already trickled through the funnel organically. Conversely, if you go top of funnel, you have to wait for all of that to happen. And like you alluded to earlier, you're not just interested in the amount of money that you make, you're also interested in how quickly you make it, because you have to think of them of the dollars as like redeploying. You want to be able to close that loop as quick as possible. So if you find this magical ATM that whenever you draw out $100, it actually gives you 120. The smart thing to do is to run around to the counter in the bank, deposit 120 and draw that out. So you can just keep going through that flywheel as quick as possible. And when you go top of funnel versus bottom, it takes a lot longer to do that. It also takes a lot longer to do that with subscriptions. So that's another reason why one-off products work, because you get your money back immediately and you can go out and buy more ads. That was a real problem that we experienced the hard way with Strength Coach Network, which was we were underwater until month 7. Once we started introducing those
LTV, though.
Sorry?
It is solid like stickiness with the platform though, compared to what I've heard other people getting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the numbers are still going up.
Like, yeah, there's a pain associated with that 7 months, but out there battling with 2 months.
Yeah, so that was another reason why we brought in the courses. That's another reason why we started using those like really heavily discounted thank you page offers, using 7-day follow-up, all that kind of stuff. And, now that Justin's running the site, there's still people that will, the day they opt into a lead magnet, they'll spend $700 in 15 minutes, some of them. And those 1 or 2 people that do that, they pay for all the ads for the rest. So I'd say that. So having a little bit of traction, bottom of the funnel, and then it really is throwing shit at a wall to see what sticks. So I think trying different angles, emotional, logical, and within emotional, it's different emotions that you can elicit. Humor,
like negativity,
disgust,
bias, or
outrage, greed. Always negative. Always negative. It's just a fact, I forget the exact number, but is it because of scarcity and because of negative things hurt and kill you in evolutionary terms, we're so hardwired to avoid negativity. And even if it is a positive outcome, you can frame it in a way that elicits more of a negative response and
it's like trying to avoid the poor outcome more than
exactly. Yeah, you flip it on its head and say, right, avoid this. I think it's just my style as well that I'm kind of, I like taking the piss and pointing things out that I think are dumb.
No, because I was going to say, like, I feel like me and you, we align with that, but then you do have your Squat U's and your Ben Patrick's where it's full NPC Sims character, toxic positivity. I can't wrap my head around that one. Though.
Well, Ben Patrick's a Scientologist, so I can wrap my head around that.
I can wrap my head around where the programming comes from, but why is that not breaking eye contact?
That is one
like
thing.
A Lego character.
Authenticity. Authenticity. I do think you really have to try. If people have pretty good bullshit detectors, and if they feel that you're not being authentic or you're trying to do an impression of somebody else, and it really does fall flat. I think that's
why all those ATG pages fail.
So don't get an ATG affiliate link if you're trying to 10x.
Yeah. So I think trying stuff out like that, and then what else would I do? Yeah, kind of work backwards through the funnel. I think having lead capture and lead follow up is one of those things where it really does plug holes in the bucket. I would almost be surprised if people can make it work profitably if they're not doing that after a certain amount of time. Just because when you're buying ads to just reach cold traffic, unless you're trying to capture lead information, people say it's like the rule of 8 or whatever, 8 contacts before people buy from you. If you want to make a sale with just social media, you're paying 8 times to interrupt them. Whereas if you can capture lead information off of social media platforms, email and text are free. So it really brings down your CAC if you're capturing lead information. And as you alluded to, like, even if they cancel, you get another swing at them. Or even if they don't buy, you get another swing at them down the line. You can do promotions, you can do all that kind of stuff. And it might just be that the timing wasn't right for them at that time. That's massive. I really do think that our big thing has been to use social media advertising to get leads, and then we'll do most of our selling via email.
Email is king, yeah.
Because it's less crowded in the inbox, it's free, you're training people to consume your content, you're not as reliant on the algorithm. Even with ads, you're effectively being penalized in terms of how much it costs you with SEO. So if it's not relevant, if it's offensive, anything like that, you're going to pay more. I think it's counterintuitive, but the goal is to get them off of social media as quick as possible. And people shit talk email marketing and say, oh, the conversion rate's so low. It's still the highest converting in terms of the purely online. Obviously, the most effective way to sell.
Are you conversing with these people to find out like what they're going to, like what the better option is?
Face-to-face obviously is king.
Yeah.
But it's not scalable. Yeah.
Because there's no algorithm to interrupt that courting process.
Yeah.
I think what you highlight, like my experience has been that, because I have the exact same view of e-commerce that you do, that it's like we have to go through this process of making people aware that we exist, giving them value day in, day out for like this 6-month fucking period. And then eventually they'll buy something. But then the algorithm, even when you have good traction, the process does get inevitably interrupted. Like people will see your post maybe for like up to 2 years, they're in that ecosystem and then they get spat out. And that is enough time to capture a bunch of customers. But the moment you get them in that email list, it's like if you're getting 50% plus open rate, you're absolutely cooking. Like that courting process can go on uninterrupted for like the next decade.
Yeah, and there was a guy this year who I remember him emailing me 5 years ago, and it was the first thing he ever bought from me was this year. So yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The fucking long tail. That's real.
Yeah. That's a little bit too long for my liking, though.
Yeah, we can't have
Yeah.
everyone taking that much time. I hear a lot about you talking about thinking of a demo, and when people are like, what's a good demo to work with? Just thinking about the size of the demo and then the average income or socioeconomic average of the people in that demographic. With this in mind, why aren't more S&C coaches marketing themselves towards Gen Pop? Or I'm not sure if are you still entertaining the grappling S&C coach side of things?
No, that was just a case study for the course.
Because I thought that was smart, because jiu-jitsu guys, they can all afford Starbucks coffees and
TRT
jiu-jitsu lessons. yeah. None of that shit's free. Like all of that stuff.
Show your old geese, all that shit.
Upper middle class. Yeah.
Well, I have had that conversation with a few online coaches that I work with, which is they want to market themselves to all combat sports or to MMA or Muay Thai, for example. Muay Thai and MMA are the worst ones to pick in my example, because if you imagine the average MMA athlete versus the average jiu-jitsu athlete, the average jiu-jitsu athlete has 2 kids, drives a BMW, all this kind of stuff. The
average jiu-jitsu guys suck.
Yeah. White collar boxing, all that kind of stuff. They actually, ironically, tend to be richer sports than pro boxing or pro MMA or pro Muay Thai. No, so that for me was just, I wanted to do a case study to demonstrate that what I talked about in the coursework. And I wanted to do it in a niche where I don't have any real personal or professional accolades. At the time, I was a dog shit blue belt. Now I'm a dog shit purple belt. I'm 38 years old, dad bod, have never worked with a jiu-jitsu athlete in my life. I'm not known in jiu-jitsu circles, all that kind of stuff. And I think I did $1,000 in 8 days. No.
Reminds me of the Grant Cardone thing where he just like shaves his head, puts on like
undercover Billy.
Yeah. But I was like, no, that's literally because I was preparing my questions for this. I was almost going to ask you that, like, show people that you could do it again, but you can't reset yourself as the rugby guy. It has to be,
Yeah. And I did actually,
even with the S&C coach to jiu-jitsu athlete pipeline, I still don't think we can consider it a full reset.
Especially not with my jiu-jitsu resume. Yeah.
My favorite question to ask people is, if Charles Poliquin was still alive, what color belt do you think he'd be?
That man. I know we're not supposed to speak ill of the dead, so I'll just move on. Yeah, so I mean, why don't they work with general population? Ego is the short answer. I think the whole 100%. Reason that most strength coaches become strength coaches is because they're failed athletes or ex-athletes. And the reason they wanted to be athletes and the reason they want to continue as strength coaches is because they have a love for the sporting environment, being around athletes, all that kind of stuff. But there's just a number of things about athletic populations that aren't conducive to making money. Sports tend to be inherently seasonal, especially the invasion sports or the team sports. And as soon as the season hits, they forget you exist. In the off season, they just go off and do whatever. And then it's really just feast and famine again. There's a lot of too many cooks spoil the broth when it comes to team sports. Everybody wants their pound of flesh. With the athlete, there's a lot of factors working against you. And quite honestly, the task of making, especially a high-level athlete, significantly better at their sport is a much harder task to accomplish than getting an average person to look, move, and feel better. I think where people do fall down, if they do tend to pick general population, is that they think that that's a green light to train everyone because it's general. I still think you have to appeal to a subset of the general population, because
how do you do that though without just being like the classic, I fucking help busy mums of 2?
I help Avatar.
Or do you think that, or is that
time frame without pain point?
Because I love how, like, people say the same thing about, everyone has a fucking fitness podcast, but I'm like, I still find this incredibly useful to my business and I enjoy it. So it's like, as much as we meme the, I help busy mums of 2 bullshit, like if that's effective, What do you
It
reckon?
is. And here's the thing. If
Marketing
you
to
just put
NPCs.
yourself in the shoes of the customer, everyone has this natural gravitation towards something they feel is a solution just for them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if your knees hurt, you're going to go to Jake Tura. If you want a big ass, you're going to go to Brett Contreras. If you want to, well, if your knees hurt, you're going to go fucking Ben Patrick, whatever. That kind of stuff. So,
but then you'll get spat out that pipeline to Jake Tura.
yes, yeah. So and if you think about it, it's because everyone's a snowflake and they just think, well, I want someone who's going to have the magic wand that's going to solve my problems better than anyone else. And we get tricked into, rightly or wrongly, thinking that because someone specializes in dealing with people like us and that problem, that they're going to be better at it than a talented generalist that would apply solutions to a bunch of people. But from a marketing standpoint as well, I was speaking to Vernon Griffith, and he kind of rightly made the point when we were at lunch, which is when somebody buys from you, they have to at least they want what you have, or they want access to something that you can give them. So if you're able to tell a compelling story to people when you're selling, which is, I have been where you've been, I understand what you're going through and how it feels. More importantly, I've kind of broken through the other side of it. And now for a fair price, I can help hurry that process along. And I think truthfully, when it comes to training athletes and sports and stuff like that, everyone out there could have the knowledge that a highly qualified coach could have. The problem is that time is not on their side. So what you pay to leapfrog that and not have to put in the same amount of time. So really they're paying for speed. They're paying not to think about it. They're paying for expertise and stuff like that. And that comes from specialization.
Fuck. I love these parts of the chat because it challenges my whole positioning in the marketplace. But Jacob, I was just making a mental note. We definitely, because I'm great at getting attention, but I feel like, and I'm great at getting people to click over to the Train Heroic page. But I just feel like my conversions, the copy there must be shit. And Jacob, we need to do much more I was in your position. I didn't know how to combine training for all these separate qualities. Now it's coming out the other side of it. I haven't run sub 12 yet. Doing that'll fucking help.
There's one thing about that, which is Neil Patel?
Oh, I know the name.
Yeah, so he's very, very clever. But one of the things he talks about, which is it's true that you do have to start incredibly focused and niche down, but you have to make the decision ahead of time that you're picking a large overall market that you can expand into.
Pulling at a thread.
Yeah, because eventually you do have to be extremely disciplined to start out with, but then as you expand, you are going to have to go out and out and out and out and out. And the classic example that Peter Thiel talks about in 0 to 1 is that when Facebook started, it wasn't open to everyone. It was open to just Harvard. Then it was just the Ivy League. Then it was just Stanford and maybe Berkeley and a couple of others on the West Coast. And then it was students only in America. And then it was students worldwide. And then they started to, they went outward and outward and outward. And had they tried to be like, oh, we're going to start a social network for 2 billion people that's available all over the world, they would have fucking flopped.
Yeah, good luck. And is this something that you did instinctively going from rugby guy to S&C guy? Or do you think that was different?
Yes.
That is, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I discovered the value of it probably by accident. So I made this mistake when I started out, which is I'm a generic personal trainer at a gym chain that doesn't exist anymore in the UK. And I was like, right, I'll train anyone because I'm desperate. And I was. So that had kind of carried over to the online stuff. Still training everyone, performance, body comp, whatever. But if you look at my interests, well, for a start, if you look at me, am I going to compete with fitness models and, roid heads giving out, fat loss and muscle gaining advice? No. What happened was my interests, how
good if you did shit on body positivity.
How I was spending my time and attention, what I was good at, what I had social cachet in, all that kind of stuff. The only place it made sense that I was going to gravitate towards rugby because my career just did this in 3 years. And then I thought, I don't want to talk about all this other stuff. I only want to talk about rugby. So that was when it was I came back to Sydney from the first stint in Argentina in October of 2013, and I bought rugbystrengthcoach.com. I paid $5,000 for that website in 2013. I wouldn't pay that now. But yeah, I bought that and I started the Facebook page, Rugby Strength Coach, and training by Kier, which is what I started under, 750 likes in 4 years. Rugby Strength Coach, 1,500 likes in a day. And it's topped out at like 35,000 when I stopped paying attention.
And was there something that happened sort of in your coaching experience that was like, okay, I should start like developing this brand as per se, like coming from someone that is, you know, starting off like that worked in like sort of S&C areas. What was like that certain point where you're like, okay, I should start like creating this sort of network and stuff like that? Yeah.
When I started working for a top 10 country in the world.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I thought, fuck, I can make some money.
It's not getting better than this.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, just even if I hadn't done that, it just got to the point where I was like, you know, I'm just going to talk about what I like. I'm going to talk about what I like because it is one of those things where it's a slog. And if you don't enjoy it, you're not going to stick with it. So I do think that is important.
Yeah. And especially for young coaches that do like a lot of hours sort of this free work and stuff like that. Is there anything that they actually can grab from those experiences that are, you know, not being paid that could translate into something like that? Was there anything that you did specifically that you got from there? Like network wise and stuff like that?
That's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, the blog for sure helped. You know, I remember when I was an intern at WASPs. So I wasn't even being paid. It was 2011. And I got an email from Brent Calloway. He's a big fucking deal at Exos now. And he said, just found your blog about working in a rugby club. If professional rugby ever came to America, would you consider working for one of our teams? And I was like, fuck yeah. If I hadn't been blogging and hadn't had an online presence at that time, he never would have heard of me. I never would have gone to China for them. I never would have gone to Argentina. None of this might have happened.
Do you feel like people undervalue longer form content?
It depends. I think it's one of those things where there's a trend within content to more and more video based and shorter and shorter and shorter. Fundamentally, when you're trying to persuade someone to give you lots of money, you have to make a really compelling case to do so. If I was going to ask you for $100K, I'd have to sit you down for hours, show you charts, here's how you're going to make your money back, all this kind of stuff. If I wanted to ask you for $1, I'd say, can I have $1, please? You'd be like, yeah, there you go. Don't worry about paying me back. So there's this proportionality between the size of the ask and how much time you have to make your case.
Yeah.
The paradox is to make those kind of asks, you have to start way back at the beginning, like you said, 3-5 seconds at a time.
But playing that out as being like, using socials for yapping and grabbing attention, and then using longer form content to accelerate that relationship building and courting process. Rather than 30-second exposures on the daily, it's like I talk about, like, if I can be yapping away in someone's ear for an hour in a podcast episode, it's harder to get people there, but just the amount of pure brainwashing that can occur in that period.
Yeah, so it's not one or the other. I think I'll give away I think the big thing to take away from the content thing that I'm about to drop this month is when you do long form podcasting, it's the best way to do it because you ask an expert 4 or 5 good questions. That's an hour of content.
You're not sitting there like a slave reading the book yourself.
Produce, edit, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, free clips.
Takes forever. There's lower expectations of the production values that you have to put into podcasting, and you get the Oprah effect. People think that Oprah is an expert on shit just because she sat in front of people that were experts. Fucking Rob Pacey. Rob Pacey coached 1 fucking year, and he's considered an expert in the industry. My left ball has more experience. Anyway.
Yeah, I saw that fucking plyometric continuum be put out.
Exactly.
And he's had Matt Watson on his podcast. That's the worst.
There you go, right?
He had Matt Watson on his podcast and then posted a photo of a box jump like 10 days later. I honestly think, it was a psyop. he was attacking Matt Watson's mental health. I think he did it on purpose. I reckon he was like, Matt Watson is hanging on by a thread right now. I'm going to post this clip.
He's in California now. He's fucking good. I'll just say this. Rob Pacey decided that he didn't like the way I did business roughly around the time he decided to compete with Strength Coach Network. He'd been getting affiliate money for Strength Coach Network for 5 fucking years. He's like, oh, I don't like the way you do business. I said, oh, this is fucking weird. Why are you still publishing the podcast you asked me to do for free? When you have that podcast, that's hour plus material, whatever it is you're going to use. You can then clip it into 5-15-minute parts that don't require as much attention. And you can do a few things to them to make it more entertaining, more attention grabbing. You can add in B-roll. You can put stuff on the screen. It's easier to digest for people that you haven't necessarily earned the right to have an hour of their time, but you're still providing a pathway to that eventually. And then I did it on purpose just now. Whatever I said about Rob Pacey, you could turn into a reel and put a whole bunch of shit on.
Oh, yeah.
And that would pop off on Instagram or TikTok and so on. You could, put up remember that, gingers don't have souls. You could put that guy on top of it. And
you're getting clipped.
Exactly.
Oh, we're back.
So by using, I've produced 1 hour of content, but I can turn that into 3 or 4 clips, 3 or 4 reels. And my call to action on the reel is going to be, head over to the main channel to watch the clips. And the call to action for the clips is going to be check out the whole conversation here. The call to action from the long form conversation is going to be sign up for my lead magnet here. And then all you do is once you start to work out those numbers, then you put ad money behind top of funnel, getting the reach with the reels.
Okay.
Damn.
So there's been a lot of really actionable information in this episode. And yeah, I guess I'd just like to give my summary and then sort of hear your thoughts on if I've summarized it correctly. So don't just fucking make content for the fuck of it. Actually have an understanding of, but understand like whose attention you're trying to grab and then like where you're trying to send them. I think a lot of coaches are out there just making content and they don't even have a way to vet whether the content was successful because again, they just didn't have a vision for what the customer journey would actually look like. Mm-hmm. Get clear on your fucking numbers for lifetime value, cost of acquisition. Understand that you are just trying to grab people's attention with short form content and then try to take them away to an email list or something like that off another platform. Did I miss any of the big rocks for coaches who are sitting there scratching their nuts, listening to this podcast, being like, I wish I could do something like what Kier did? Any other big rocks?
I don't think so. I do think it's...
Have a bit of cunt about you.
Of course. High LTVs. I've learned the way to make money is sell expensive shit to rich people. It really is hard when you sell cheap stuff to make up in volume. You're not Coca-Cola. You're not gonna make billions and billions making, how much is it? 5 cents a can they make? It's probably not gonna happen. You need to sell expensive shit to rich people. Yeah.
Okay.
I take it.
Fuck. All right, quite a journey. Thank you so much for coming on, Kier. If you just like to plug, if you want people to find you, where they can find you, and then anything big you've got coming up, because I know there's a few things in the works.
Callmekier.com. You can find the course, the Money Moves course there. The proposition for that is teach you how to make $1,000 in 8 weeks that it takes to do the course, or I'll just work with you for free until you get it. So it's not life-changing, but I don't think most strength coaches have 1K in the bank. I'm going to drop a cheaper, the course is $1,000. So I'm going to drop a content and social media mini course. It's going to be about $100 at the end of this month. That's what I just told you, plus a whole bunch more. That'll probably be about 2-3 hours long. And then, honestly, I think that the ad agency stuff, we're going to limit to people that have done the course, just because there's a lot of stuff.
Velvet roping and cucking everyone on the outside.
That, but also synergistically, there's a lot of stuff that has to happen to make the ads work, like lead capture, follow up, having the right
because this was one of my questions about, was there a fear about your course? Because I did your course, Money Moves. I thought it was fucking sick. As I was doing it, the only thing I was thinking, like a lot of people just won't have realized that you actually have to do a lot of stuff.
I have simplified it so much since you came through, because truthfully, there was an anxiety.
What was that, a year ago?
Yes, there was an anxiety on my part, which is $1,000 is a lot of money. So I'm going to have to over deliver so much. And I'll be like, right, here's everything that we did. And I realized you can't cram that into 10 weeks. And there were people that went through that course that did, close to 20 grand in 10 weeks. But there were people that didn't. And what I realized is some people will not have the technical ability, it sounds nasty, the work
You got
effort.
people who barely know how to send an email.
Correct. So that's why the course as it is now, I moved it over to Train Heroic, and it is $1,000 in 8 weeks using only Train Heroic and your own social media. That's it. Because once you host on their platform, you don't have to do automations. You don't have to try and ring fence your IP. You don't have to really edit the sales page.
Just get Zapier in there and fucking you cook
exactly.
it.
Yeah, you get a little bit from the marketplace, and then I think let's say you get $50 price point. That's 40 sales. You get 1% conversion. You need 4,000 contacts. Not that difficult.
Fucking hell. There you go, guys. The keys to the fucking city.